Welcome to our new podcast format. I have no idea if I take this phrasing, but yeah, let's see. From Qigong Academy. We're curious, woohoo, to do some podcast and to tell us about thoughts and visions and offers and yeah, all around from Qigong Academy, from our community, and from the playground of how can you adapt Eastern Qigong principles to the Western New Age format. Thanks. So nice to have you here, John.
Cheers, Joe. Good to be here.
Great. You published yesterday an article which is really a little bit disruptive, I would say. Do you want to tell
Yeah.
me what drove you, if that makes sense in English, to write this type of article? And what was your motivation behind that? Because it feels like there is a bigger motivation at the ground.
Um, oh, yeah. Just a little question. My okay. So my experience of Qigong is the first 10 years that I practiced for. I practiced because I thought I was good at Qigong. And it was all kind of self-congratulatory twaddle. It was useful. I got better at certain things, but it wasn't impactful. It didn't really ask me the difficult questions that I needed to be asked. And then I came across Zhineng, and Zhineng was a system that was challenging to me. It was uncomfortable, it was difficult. And because it was uncomfortable and difficult, it got into the things that I really needed to address. Um, but my sense is that within the world of Zhineng, we tend to have backed away from the difficult. We tend to back away from being challenging. Um, and I don't know why this has happened, because if I hear the stories about Pang, I hear about somebody who was willing to be very challenging with people. Um, and a lot of the things that he said right at the beginning, there's a letter that we've got that we've been able to get hold of and work on the translation with Gao, which was done right at the beginning of Jining. And he's talking about taking down the hierarchies, removing the traditions, getting rid of the esoteric and the superstitious. And yet, if you look what we've got now, we've got a weirdly hierarchical system. We've got really kind of esoteric and superstitious ideas around chi field and lineage, and it's kind of gone completely the opposite way to the way that Pang set it out. And I think that we need to have a conversation about it. Now, I'm quite happy for everybody to tell me that I'm wrong, and I'm quite happy to take a slightly hardline approach on it so that we can have that conversation and find the middle ground. But I just feel that we need to do something that actually goes, what was this thing that was invented? Because it wasn't pink and fluffy, and it wasn't howler, howler, howler. It was something that was far more effective and far more hard hitting than that.
All right. I see. When you say it was introduced like that and that, can you tell me more about, from your knowledge, where Qineng came from and what was the vision from Dr. Pang? Do you know more about that?
Um, I can express what I know at the moment. Um, and each time I spend time with Teacher Gao on the translation projects that we've got going on with him, and we're going to be retranslating all of the main books that we used in the 2-year program at the Huajiao Center. We're going to be retranslating them. Um, each time I work with him, I find more and more that I hadn't twigged to. So where I currently am with it, I think we need to have an awareness of the situation in China when Jining was created, because Pang was very much part of the establishment. He was very much part of the Communist Party, and he was working with a system. He was working to develop a qigong that was acceptable to the government, to the Communist Party, and truly accessible to the people that he was working with.
All right.
Um, it needed to follow the remit of the government, which is it had to be health focused and scientific. Now, the thing that I think he did that was astonishing is that he managed to do that very effectively without um, killing the spiritual aspect of the practice. It's still there. It's just not explicit. Um, but he was very clear about certain things. He makes this statement in the letter that, there should be no hierarchy. Everybody should accept that everybody else is their teacher. But the number of interactions I've had with, um, let's just go with some Chinese teachers. I don't want to name names here.
Mhm.
Um, but the number of interactions I've had around Chinese teachers who treat everybody as if they're a lower being, regardless of how much experience they have. They're kind of looked down on in a really weird way. And there's kind of a fake humility that sits within it that just makes me go, this isn't this isn't what was going on.
But is that something like you experience in almost every area? Like, I don't know, I would say tennis or football or whatever,
Uh,
or
yeah, and it's a completely, as a business approach, as a marketing approach, as a way to keep hold of your clients, as a way to make yourself a good amount of money, it's completely valid. And of course, Qigong is not going to operate outside of those constructs. But we need to recognize that that isn't the nature of Qigong, that is the business of Qigong. The nature of Qigong and the business of Qigong feel like they're two very separate things.
right, okay, where's the red line, I would say, between business Qigong and yeah, real Qigong, or how you would tell that or call that? What is a real thing?
I think this is kind of it's a weird one to answer. Excuse me a second. I'm just going to shut the door.
All right.
There we go. Proves it's real and it's not an AI thing. Okay, so yeah, I think it's because as I was putting the stuff together yesterday, I was thinking I'm being quite strongly critical about Qigong running as a business, while at the same time the Qigong Academy is kind of unashamedly running as a business. So aren't I just, what am I actually doing here? I think fundamentally there are two things that are important to me at this point, and one is about accessibility. I had a conversation recently with one of the Qigong organizations. They're charging £250 a day per person to go and spend time with their Chinese teacher. And that isn't a one-to-one, that is big groups of people. And you're going, how many people who are in need can afford to spend £250 a day to go and do this? While there's also this claim that Qigong should be available to everybody, but it isn't available to everybody. It's available to the people who have got a significant amount of money to spend on something that they're either passionate about because they love the stuff that they do, or they're becoming dependent on because they can't find the answers to their health and well-being anywhere else. And either way I break that down, it feels exploitative. Um, I have no issue with the fact that people need to make money in order to cover costs. But what point does that become profiteering? Because that isn't something that is Qigong business. That isn't the nature of Qigong. It isn't about making loads of money out of people. I mean, for God's sake, the Huajiao Center, what were the figures? It was between 100 and 300 yuan a month to go there, like between 10 and 30 pounds a month. And that wasn't just tuition, that was food and board as well. Pang developed something that was accessible. Why is this now spiraled into something that's inaccessible? And I think that's one of the things within the Qigong Academy. Yes, we've set the price at £35 a month, um, because we need to be able to cover our costs and we want to be able to pay our teachers. And we live in a society that is far more expensive than 1990s China. But the bottom line is it should be accessible to people. There should never be financial barriers to this, but yet the profiteering means that financial barriers go up. So that's the first one. The second one, sorry, I'm off on one. The
Just go for
second,
it.
the second thing that I think is important is that within Pang's teaching, he always seemed to be saying that There should be no hierarchy. Everybody is a teacher. Everybody is equal. Um, Now, we can kind of pull that one apart in many, many ways. But the issue that I have is that in a lot of the Qigong businesses, you have a primary teacher who is then the main figurehead that is promoted. And again, is this the person or is this the marketing machine that sits behind them? Um, I don't know. You know, I've spent time with quite a lot of the very high profile teachers, and I like them. I've learned a lot from them. But the way it's presented, it's kind of they become destination teachers. Oh, I can't wait to go back and see such and such next year. I've got a retreat booked with Thingy. Um, you know, and it's just like this actually, what the response we should be having to Qigong is more about, I've discovered this amazing thing I can do for myself. I've got a community of people here that are supportive. There's a group of people here. This is the Qi field. The Qi field is a non-hierarchical space that we can be supportive of each other. It isn't a pyramid with the main teacher sitting at the top. Um, that's not what it is. But that's the way it is presented through the business. So that's why at Qigong Academy, I think the thing that's really important to us is that we remove the hierarchy.
Do you experience that just the last years, I would say, or do you experience that for a longer period, that there are more hierarchies out there, or was till the first day?
Um, I've become more sensitive to it over time. Um, when I was first training I guess it's almost 20 years since I started training in Zhineng, I wasn't overly aware of it. After maybe 5 years, I noticed there were certain teachers that when we were running Three Monkeys, for example, there was a couple of times that we had interactions with people where the teachers were saying, we want access to your database. We want to get access to all of your people. We want to be able to message them directly. And you're kind of going, well, that doesn't make sense to me. There were a few teachers at that point that we took the decision to never work with because of the way they were running as a business. Um, and yeah, I mean, we also see I think there's traditionally there always seems to be a lot of mud flung at Ming Tong Gu. And I think Ming Tong's an interesting case in point here. He has a reputation for being expensive, but he's also very much loved and very effective in what he does. There is nothing wrong with spending time with teachers like this, but I think you need to have an awareness of when you are being empowered by it and when you're being disempowered by it. Because empowering somebody doesn't sit so well with a business structure.
All right. Um, yeah, interesting. All right. Mm, I know that in the Western society, there's a bias that, um, yeah, it throws up a question when you're a Qigong teacher, for example. Am I able to, or am I allowed to charge money from the people I teach, or I give a practice session or something? And how much am I allowed to do? So,
Yeah, and again, there's a weird hierarchy here. Running the teacher training, and the people say, "Oh, I can't charge people to teach them when I'm still in training." Why not? You have costs. You probably have the highest costs ever when you're going through your training. So not only are you paying for your training, you've probably got to go and hire a space to work with. You need to market it. You need to do all of these bits and pieces. You need to be able to do something to support yourself financially in that situation. And if you say, I don't want anything in return, quite often that translates as I give no value, therefore I offer I want nothing back. Um, and then you go to the other end of the scale where people are paying a vast amount of money because they have complete faith in the teacher instead of having faith in themselves. There's kind of a middle point that I think is a really a really like interesting, juicy point where there is a lot of opportunity for people to collaborate and work together. And actually, everybody learns, everybody is empowered. It's mutually supportive. And so I think that also applies to the price point. I think there is a price point that sits in the middle. Now, I think that price point varies depending on which country you're in and the overall financial ability within the country. Um, the vision that we have with the academy is that every teacher that works with us will get paid exactly the same amount of money. And it's an hourly rate for the sessions that they do. And it doesn't matter if you're fresh out of your training or whether you are stuck you're a stuck in your ways old teacher like me. Everybody should get paid exactly the same amount of money because we all should offer the same amount of potential to the people that we work with.
It sounds like a fair plan, I would say. Um, I, yeah, when I ran through the nonviolent communication training, I took the guy who ran this, the trainer, on a kind of step up where I am not, or I wasn't. So he knows more. He's like, yeah, I would say kind of the king and teaches me stuff. But that was a very, very toxic kind of relationship on the long term. Um, I guess we're trained like that. We as a society, Western or Eastern, there was warriors or emperors and so on. Um, is that the time to break that bias or to get rid of that in this realm of Qigong?
Oh, yeah, thanks for that. That's a proper juicy one. I think that from a very young age, our interaction with teachers and our interaction with learning is that you know stuff, you're going to give us the stuff, and we've got to remember the stuff.
Hmm.
You learn technique, you learn facts, you learn process, you learn theory, you learn all of the rest of this good stuff. Um, and then I have to ask the question, why?
From early stages or early times, I would say to survive, right?
Yep, to survive in NVC, in nonviolent communication, why do you learn the technique?
Because I really want to deep dive into kind of feelings. How can I express feelings? How can I communicate feelings to other people? And how can I, maybe I would say, train my empathy and differentiate between empathy and sympathy?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. So you've got the technique and you've got the benefit.
yeah.
Okay. If you've put that back into a more academic kind of school thing, we tend to learn. So when you go to school, why do you learn the subjects that you learn? Why do you learn the information that you learn at school? Um, to be honest, most of that is so that you can pass an exam.
Exactly.
It's put stuff in so that you can then regurgitate it. You can like vomit it all over an exam paper at the end of the year and show how much I can remember. Um, it's a way of absorbing information. Now, if you then go, what is it that we're doing within Qigong? There is an argument here that says we are at completely the opposite end of the learning spectrum to what you do in school or what you do in academia. Because what we're interested in is recognizing it's basically an unlearning space. It's about how do you get somebody to actually let go of the restrictions that bind them, of the beliefs that hold them back, of the physical limitations that they're able to move through, of the emotional stuff that is limiting their potential. Qigong is it's an unlearning process, and as such, it means that as teachers, we have something really quite tricky to do because not only are we using a technique that is not of our culture normally, and a process that is not really that aligned to the way that most people learn, but we need to hold ourselves in a space that we prevent people from getting overly attached to us, going, here's the person with all the answers, which is the traditional relationship. We need to be able to hold the space so that people can find the stuff for themselves. Have you got a cat just turned up there?
You mean that?
No, no, I can see colors move. I can see shadows. I was thinking
I
as
just closed the window because there was noise out there. Okay. Yeah, yeah, interesting. So then the phrase becoming empty but not empty becomes more kind of a meaning, or you can take that maybe even easier or something. Um, but is it all about to just unlearn?
um
Because
certainly.
I experience that like when you more and more unlearn, you kind of uncover your overtrained biases and convince things,
Hmm.
and you recognize more and more who you really are and how you really feel and what you really believe. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that is the nature of Qigong. I think that the benefit of it is it creates space. I love the idea that Qi can only flow where there is space for Qi to flow.
Yeah.
If there's no space for it to flow, what happens is that the Qi then attaches to whatever is in that space. It kind of binds with it. So if you're holding on to a bit of information or a belief and it's getting in the way of everything and you practice Qigong, you can actually reinforce that belief.
Mhm.
Um, and we do see this. We do see issues with Qigong where people have used the Qigong in order to reinforce a belief system or reinforce a narrative or somehow support that narrative. And it doesn't actually create freedom. It creates focus and it kind of builds barriers. Um, that isn't being skillful with your chi. Being skillful with your chi is allowing it to flow through. So you need to remove the barriers. Um, so yeah, to me, it should always be that. And the other thing that I think is the number of times I've been asked over the years to, will you do a demonstration for us? And I'm just like, no, what am I, a performing monkey? It's not a performative practice. Um, we don't need to get dressed up in silk pajamas and stand by a stream or on a beach in order to get the benefit from it. That is a performance. That isn't real Qigong. Real Qigong is the stuff that we do for ourselves that creates a real difference for us as individuals and helps us understand the nature of relationship with the nature of quietness, the nature of stillness. That's what Qigong is. But you know, the and when we have these conversations sometimes, don't we, about should we have Qigong Academy t-shirts? And there's a part of me that goes, yes, we should have Qigong Academy t-shirts. And then there's another part of me that goes, oh no, can you imagine a whole room full of people all wearing the Qigong Academy t-shirts going, oh, I can do this move. And no, I don't want no, it's not, that's not it.
So we can just sell kind of unprinted, just yeah, very regular t-shirts
Pure teacher, yeah,
with a
pure
pen.
t-shirts.
Just write your own stuff on it. Yeah, yeah, sure.
Yeah, or just with nothing on it. This is like the Qigong State t-shirt.
Mm.
And then we can put our business heads on and charge 3 times as much for them because they're so much purer.
Yeah, absolutely. We watched it triple times or three times.
Yes.
Yeah. Which I would say re three questions should you ask yourself when you're a Qigong teacher or becoming a Qigong teacher, as
Oh,
well as the old wise Qigong teachers.
I think I think 3 questions. Certainly, that one of the questions I think you need to ask is what do you want to achieve by becoming a Qigong teacher? I think that's probably within that. I think all the other questions probably exist. I think a lot of people, when they choose to become Qigong teachers, there's a little bit of the internal savior that's going on, going, I can help people. Um, and that is a really noble approach, but it's one that will destroy you. Because if you become good at what you do and you're out there to help people, you are giving of yourself. You are draining yourself. And you need to understand your relationship with helping people, because the nature of that relationship is more about creating space for them to do amazing things for themselves, um, than it is about you doing amazing things for them. And that balance is really important. If you're going into Qigong to be rich and famous, um, there's not so many people who achieve that. And I'm not sure in achieving that whether you have anything to do with Qigong. I think you just turn into a Qigong business person. You become a spiritual celebrity or something, and that's just like, okay, not sure that's really, again, I don't know how sustainable that is. I imagine it must be absolutely exhausting trying to cover up all your dirty little secrets in order when you're in those positions. You know, just on that note, I've hosted quite a lot of the Chinese teachers here and seen them dyeing their grey hair black so they can maintain image. I think, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Um, there's
Interesting insight. Thank you for that.
there's a whole load of stuff that sits here that I think is fascinating. Um, what else would I say? I think the other thing that comes up is that people don't realize how transformative it is. People think, it's just like, oh, I could just run a Qigong class once a week. Um, and actually, the process of learning to teach, the process of really engaging with Qigong, the process that we take people through, changes everything. Um, it means that you live your life in a different way, and sometimes that's subtly different, but sometimes that feels significantly different. Um, and that to me is the nature of Qigong. Unless the teacher is able to continue to evolve and grow, why would you go to them? Because they're just stuck in their ways.
Hmm. I mean, that maybe, yeah, opens up the question, what is the motivation of the person who goes to a Qigong class or Qigong practice session? For some people, I guess it's just nice to be in a kind of a group and doing an interesting thing called Qigong. And for other people, and maybe just doing the movement, waving their arms and legs around, you say multiple times. Um, and for others, it's a really path to their inner self kind of thing. I mean, the question is, what is Qigong for you as a specific or individual person who goes to this?
Yeah, yeah, and here again, we need to go. What is the expectation of somebody who, what does the person who comes to a Qigong class want? What do they expect? What do they think is going to happen? Is what you're doing meeting the expectation? Is it is it supportive? Is it challenging? Um, these types of questions come up an awful lot for me because working with different audiences and the way that you have to adapt to different audiences. I've worked with with a pretty wide range of people in the time I've been doing it, and having the ability to adjust the way that you express the practice so that it hits the mark, I think is a skill that we need to hone. Um, but yeah, what do people expect? Um, I think there was an interesting comment on this a good few years back where somebody I was working with said the thing about Qigong is that most people think it's a healing practice. But what they don't realize is that the healing is the gateway into the practice. Once the healing has happened, that's when the practice begins. Um,
To
and I
keep
think,
that state of heal or be healed.
yeah.
Okay.
And so if you come in order to heal something within yourself, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, however that, and I think even healing here becomes a slightly contentious word. You are looking for a benefit. You are looking for things to work in a more comfortable way within your life. Once you find that, quite a lot of people will then step away from the practice because it's done its job. And I think that that's a completely valid and fair thing to do. But if you stay with the practice, you then start to understand a little bit more about what sits behind it. And so instead of it, no, instead of it simply being a like a symptom focused, I need to get away from this thing, it becomes a life focused, I'm going to change this thing. And I think that quite a lot of people who teach, um, you don't necessarily start teaching with an awareness of the bit that comes after. You tend to teach based on an expectation of what comes before.
All right. So, last question. Why have you established Qigong Academy? And maybe another question to that combined. What do you want to achieve?
Oh, bloody hell, go for the big one. Right. Um, I'm always inspired by it's the guy who founded the electronics company Panasonic, um, a guy called Kamisugi Matsushita. And in later life, he was asked about a certain project that he got going and how many years until you achieve your aim with this? And his response was, oh, 300 or 400 years. Um, I like the idea of something that is that far off that we're moving towards. And the thing that is that far off that I want to be part of is a movement that means that we as a human race start to take more responsibility for our well-being. We start to take more responsibility for looking after ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, and that we are more aware of the impact that we have on everyone and everything around us, so that we can live a more harmonious life. Um, I think for me, I can't see that happening in my lifetime because I think that there are so many moving parts to this. You know, I think we need multiple generations to go through so that the patterns that we currently have can start to resolve. Um, but if I can be part of a movement that actually supports that growth and that evolution and that change, that excites me. Um, and within that, I really do not want to be remembered. I don't want to have a legacy here. That's not the point at all. When I pass, let me go. I want to, I want to go off and explore what's next. I don't want hooks back into this world. Um, but if in this space I can be part of something and I can collaborate with people and I can work with people in order to make things better for generations to come, I'm deeply passionate about that. Um, I think Qigong Academy is very much part of that. I think that it holds the space where we can get Qigong teachers to actually talk to each other and listen to each other and support each other. We create a space where practitioners can work with open-minded and aware Qigong teachers, not destination teachers, but signpost teachers, as we spoke about in the short. Um, we already have the impact that we've got the research going on with Oxford, which I think it's kind of mind-blowing that that's been possible. Um, we've got other projects that are going on, other bits and pieces. We're working with acupuncture schools. We're working within the health service in certain areas. All of this is not about trying to get people into to study with me. It's about how do we create funnels into a place that is actually operating in the way that Qigong was designed to operate, which is in a non-hierarchical, accessible and supportive way, that we can be there in order to meet people where they are and create space for Qi to flow more easily within them. That's what I want now, and that's where I'd like it to go.
I think that's a wonderful closing. Thank you very much, John. Please check
Thank you.
out the description box to see the links we point to, like our community and the blog post we're talking about. And stay tuned. We really plan to release every Tuesday an episode. Cheers.